Hey guys, thank you for checking out the video. My name is G and you're watching Keeping This Tech. In today's video, we're going to be doing a lens update for the A6400. I've had the camera since launch and I've had all of these lenses for about the same amount of time. So we're going to dive in looking at the Sony 10-18. We're also going to look at the Sigma 16, Sigma 30, both of which have a 1.4 aperture, the Zeiss 16-70 and why I no longer have that lens, but we'll talk about my experiences while I did have it. And then we're going to look at the 85 FE 1.8 and to just, add some more sauce to it, we'll throw in the 35 FE 1.8. This is a new lens from Sony, and I think it's amazing on the A6400. Right after this. Right before we get into the video, I just want to say thank you to everybody who checked out the last A6400 video. Anybody who commented, liked, or subscribed, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. The video's done tremendously well, and that's because of all of you. All right, but we're here for the lenses, so let's get into that. Now, the 10-18 millimeter lens from Sony is the one that I've been using the most on my A6400. I mentioned in the last video that I was talking about getting into some client work, and that's exactly what I've done since I published that last video. I've worked on video projects and other types of photography, but amongst them is real estate photography. And the 10-18 has been my lens of choice. Just a little bit about this lens. It's an ultra wide angle zoom lens, and to the best of my knowledge, that's the only ultra wide angle zoom that's available for the Sony APS-C. If there's another, feel free to let me know in the comments below. It was released back in 2012, which is pretty interesting because this lens functions and operates like it was made for the modern cameras. It's pretty impressive, and maybe it shouldn't be, but for me it is. I mean, the eye autofocus, the real-time tracking, face tracking, all that just works perfect. Also about this lens, it's an f4, so exposure doesn't change when you're zooming in or you're zooming out, and that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. We'll talk about that in just a little bit as well. It has OSS, which means it's optically stabilized in the lens, so that's a great combination for something like the A6400 that does not have any in-body image stabilization. It's super lightweight, ultra compact. It's just a really good lens all around. If you're looking for a one lens solution for landscape photography, real estate photography, for video, maybe establishing shots or, vlogging, this is a lens that I do recommend you consider because it's just really good. In fact, it's worth the price of admission alone, even just for stills. The colors, the details, this lens is uber sharp. It really is. I think this lens is pretty remarkable. Now, of course, there's going to be distortion. It's an ultra wide angle lens, and there's going to be some chromatic aberration and color fringing from time to time. But there's a couple of things that you can do to mitigate those things. Firstly, make sure you have your in-camera lens correction turned on. That kind of helps fix any distortion that might happen, not just with this lens, but other lenses. Also, what I like to do when I'm shooting real estate or landscape is use the leveler. If I can get everything level in shot, in frame, in camera, then it just makes it easier for Lightroom to do the heavy lifting later on if there's any issues with verticals or perspective or anything like that. The other thing is chromatic aberration and color fringing. And honestly, that's just a couple of mouse clicks away from being taken care of. So those two things are not really huge issues, and they don't take away from the overall experience of having to use this lens. Now, I mentioned earlier that the maximum aperture of f4 is a bit of a mixed bag, so allow me to explain. It's a constant aperture of f4, so that's a good thing, right? You're able to zoom in, zoom out, and not have to worry about your exposure changing. However, an aperture of f4 paired up with an APS-C sensor is just not ideal for low light. Now, I had to learn this the hard way, but that's just the way that I shoot. Those are the images that I'm trying to create and like my personal preference. That being said, for stills, it's not that big of a deal because you're able to ride the shutter speed to compensate for the aperture being at f4. And in fact, because the lens has OSS built in, it's even better when you're hand holding it. You don't have to worry about that. And if you're on a tripod, ride that shutter speed all the way till you blow out your highlights. I mean, not really, but Anyway, now for video, this is where it gets tricky because you really can't ride your shutter speed. In fact, you have to typically follow the 180 rule, which basically means whatever your frame rate is, you need to double that for your shutter speed. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, you need to be at 1/50th of a second for your shutter speed. And if you're doing slow motion, it goes up even higher than that, lessening the light that you're getting with the aperture of f4 on an APS-C sensor. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Now, that being said, I'll still use this in low light situations from time to time. It's just not ideal for every situation. Here's some footage that I shot with the 10-18 with the A6400 using the Crane M2. Now this gimbal is amazing. If you're looking for a small gimbal for your A6400, definitely get this. But before I go off on a tangent, let me just say that the reason why this worked out was there was enough light. The ISO settings on the A6400 weren't bad. I was shooting in picture profile 10, and you know what? It worked out. But again, if I wanted to do something where I wanted to isolate my subject, maybe do a talking head video, blur out the background, get some bokeh, I wouldn't be able to really do it as effectively with this lens as I would be able to do it with the Sigma 16 1.4. Now that lens is an amazing lens for video. And in fact, I actually use that lens in combination with my 10-18 for a lot of my video projects. They're a great pair to have in the bag, at least in my experience. So let's talk about the 16 from Sigma, right? That 1.4. Now, across the internet, you search anywhere online, watch YouTube videos, whatever, this lens will be heralded as one of the greatest lenses that you can get for the APS-C. And now I totally agree with that. It's a maximum aperture of 1.4, so it lets a lot of light in. Great bokeh. You can blur out the background. You have that effective field of view of 24 millimeters, so it's great for landscapes. It's great for video, as I just talked about. Now, if you're not needing to go ultra wide, then absolutely the 16 might be all you need, and the price is really good. It's like $400. I didn't talk about the price with the 10-18, but it's like I'll put it up on the screen so you guys could see, but it's up there. It's a lot higher than this, but also that does a lot more too, right? And it has OSS built in, but you do have to weigh out your pros and cons for both. Now, this lens is a lot bigger than the 10-18, and being bigger, it doesn't fit on like something like the Crane M2 there for smaller compact cameras and smaller lenses. That being said, if you have a bigger gimbal that can support more weight, then that's all you need to vlog. I mean, I just think that it's a great lens. Again, it doesn't have OSS, but you can use it on a tripod. If you're taking pictures, you can definitely make sure that your shutter speed is up a little bit more than it would need to be if you had OSS to capture those moments. So not too many negatives about this lens, except for the fact that it's a lot bigger than the other lenses. And hey, it is what it is. This is an amazing lens. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. If you're thinking about this lens, pick it up. You won't regret it. Sigma has been trailblazing when it comes to the APS-C line of lenses. It's the reason why I went with the A6400. So it's safe to say that I'm a huge fan of the Sigma lenses. So the Sigma 30 1.4 is a lens that I have on my camera. If I'm not shooting real estate with the 10-18 or doing video with the 16, I'm using the Sigma 30 just for casual photography. I'm out and about just taking, a little small, lightweight, compact setup. That's what I'm using. And so much so that it's the reason why I got rid of my 16-70. I would take my Sigma 30 with my A6400 out, but always have my 16-70 in the bag, just in case I wanted something wider, or if I wanted to zoom in, or maybe I wanted to shoot video and have something a little bit more stabilized. I don't know. And I found that I really wasn't using my 16-70 at all. And I also discovered that I like that focal range of that 40 equivalent that it would give you. I think it's about 45. And so it's not quite 50 and it's not really 30, but it's like kind of in between. And so it's just wide enough to get a lot in the shot, but then a little bit of medium telephoto as well. I think it's a great lens. The colors are great. I mean, everything about this setup here is lightweight, low profile, but powerful. If there is one negative, it would be the fact that it doesn't have OSS, but in no way is that a deal breaker because autofocusing is quick. The price is amazing. This is a good lens to pick up. Now, if you are looking for OSS, there is the Sony 35 1.8 for APS-C that has OSS built in, and that could be a great option for you as well. That puts you at about the proper 50 equivalent, right? A little over 50. So there's that as an alternative option. Over the summer, Sony announced the 35 FE, and it was released back in September. So I went ahead and I picked that up for my A7 III, but it's also fantastic for the A6400. That lens for video with the A6400, oh my goodness. It's one of my favorite combos. This lens is tack sharp. It has the newer motors for autofocus, so it's super silent. You can't hear a thing with this lens when it's focusing, and it is quick. I mean, for eye detection, face tracking, overall quality video stills, next level on this lens. And it's great. I think if you're someone like me who has a full frame and you also have, you know, an A6000 camera, whether it be the 6400 or a 66, or even if you have intentions of upgrading to a Sony full frame in the future, it makes sense to get something like this so that way you're covered when the time comes. I have no complaints about this lens. Of course, like all the other lenses, chromatic aberration, perspective, all that stuff comes into play, but easily fixed in post with no issue. Because the 30 and the 35mm are so close in focal range, I do find that I'm actually taking the 35 out with the A6400 if I'm only taking one lens with me. And that's because I prefer the 50, I guess, over the 45. That being said, I'm still going to keep the 30 around because if I'm working on a project that requires multiple angles, say for video, it makes sense for me to have a mid telephoto to wide angle on one side and then maybe something that's zoomed in or even zoomed out even more on the other camera. So for me, that makes sense. Let's just jump into the full frame 85 FE since we're talking about full frame anyway. This paired up with the A6400 is the ultimate portrait combination for APS-C. In my opinion, I think this is just great. It's 127mm, so it's going to give you that 135 equivalent, that compression in the background, the subject isolation, the clarity, the detail, the bokeh. This is like, I don't know, man. There's just something about that field of view and the way the images come out that is just stunning. With the 1.8 aperture, it's great for video and low light. If you're into portraiture, then this is the lens to get. A lot of times, if I know I'm going to be somewhere where, you know, I'm going to be far away from what's going on, I will have the 85 in the bag, throw it on the A6400 and get amazing shots. I actually took this out to the beach. There was a sand castle building festival, and here are some images that I took with that. And again, you just see it right there. I mean, the detail is all there. You know, the compression is there, the blur is there, everything is good. I mean, so for people, for objects, for anything really, if you have the amount of space that you need for the distance that you'll need to take the photo, you'll be all set. If portraiture is your thing and the distance is gonna be a problem with the 85, then I would highly recommend the Sigma 56. In fact, I would go with the 56 if not for the fact that the 85 works as a proper 85 on my full frame. So if I ever really need that focal range for portraiture, then I'm using it on my A7 III. So it's just one of these things that, you know, you're able to play around with. But ultimately, what I hope to convey in this video is if you're looking to get into the A6400 or any of the A6000 systems, there's tons of lenses that'll fit whatever videography or photography that either you're into or you want to get into. It's just a great time to be a Sony user. There's tons of options, without a doubt. If you like this video, make sure to like it, subscribe for more content like this, leave a comment below. I will check you guys out in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.